A drastic change just this week from extreme to even worse, if that's possible, as California suffers through an unprecedented, the most severe
water consumption.
Speaking of water, check
mandatory
Today, Governor Brown declared California's drought is over.
So California's problems are solved, right? California is no stranger to droughts, as we have had 9 severe droughts in recent history. The drought in the late 1920s and early 1930s highlighted California's need for water infrastructure and prompted the state's first water conservation acts, as well as the construction of dams and canals. During the 3rd driest years in California history, the Central Valley Project was put in place to try to combat the arid environment. The project provided water by storing and regulating water in Northern California reservoirs and distributing it to the Central Valley.
Back, I want to say, kind of in the 40s and 50s, it was like, oh no, what are we going to do? So they built the Central Valley Project.
In 1960, the project was replaced by the California State Water Project, which provides safe drinking water to 25 million people, as well as irrigation to 750,000 acres of farmland.
Essentially what you have is a system where you bring the water into the delta, and then you move the water through that delta to the south part of the delta and suck it out with a bunch of pumps.
Each water agency have different facilities to bring water into their jurisdiction.
As with nearly all environmental issues, climate change is a keystone factor pertaining to the ongoing and worsening droughts ravaging California.
We have a system that was designed in the 1940s and the 1950s around weather patterns back then, and those patterns are changing over time. Those systems are designed to use the natural snowpack up in the Sierra Nevadas, which represents about 1/3 of our water supply, and we're seeing less and less of that.
While an estimated $26.1 billion has been put toward programs combating climate change, how much has been used to improve California's drought-stricken conditions? Out of the money allotted, California has put about 30% toward capital improvements, 46% toward water production, 5% toward maintenance, 8% toward hiring local water experts, 10% toward public water supply companies, and only 1% toward conservation.
Right now, the estimate is about $17 billion, which is a lot of money. But in California, whoever benefits from this project pays for it.
The recently approved Twin Tunnels project will also require a great deal of money, an estimated $20 billion. The project calls for 2 large tunnels which take water from the Delta, a natural collection point for the Sacramento River. These tunnels will run through California to supply the agriculture and urban industries in SoCal.
Well, concerning the twin tunnels specifically, there is a need to work to figure out how to fix the plumbing in California. So I think that there is a need for those tunnels, and operated properly, they're going to actually help the Delta.
However, many are skeptical of the project.
I'm not convinced that the twin tunnels are a cost-effective way to support agriculture. From my perspective, it would substantially harm some of the most fertile agricultural land in the entire world.
As most California residents know, the government raised prices of water and threatened residents with massive fines during the years of the drought. But agriculture, which is responsible for nearly 80% of the state's water usage, did not have any restrictions implemented. While this may seem unfair to many citizens, farmers had to pay the price in other ways.
Going into the drought, we had about 300 sheep that we bred every year to get lambs that we sold for income. Because of the drought, we sold almost 75% of those sheep.
During extreme drought conditions, many farmers turned to groundwater pumping as an alternative water source. This forced reliance on groundwater led to the pumping out of an excessive amount of water.
So groundwater has been a public resource, or an open access resource basically until now, where anybody who owned land can stick a well or a straw down there and start pumping groundwater out.
Groundwater supply levels began to significantly decrease as water was being pumped out at a higher rate than it was being put back in.
And as the drought continues, we see that our groundwater basin started to subside, which is not a good situation. Nobody wants to see that happen.
One possible solution to this is groundwater banks. A groundwater banking system allows citizens to use groundwater during the drought. However, during the wet season, these banks would be recharged by heavy rains and would store the water in case of another drought.
And so one of the things we're doing with groundwater recharge is trying to capture kind of storm flows which would normally go out to the Pacific Ocean and put that water into the ground, and then basically bank it there. You put it there like a bank account, like a savings account. You put the water in, and then some number of years later you have a big drought, and then you allocate it and you take the water out.
Many Californians believe that simply taking a shorter shower and not watering their lawns is the solution to California droughts.
We're not out there looking for an end solution where it's like, okay, we're done, we all get to go home now and do something else. It will always be an issue in California how we manage water.